The email landed in my inbox like a bomb waiting to explode. Rogers International facing hostile takeover. 5 simple words that made my coffee turn bitter in my mouth. I hadn't heard that name in years, not since the night I walked away from everything I was supposed to inherit. My name is Athena, and 5 years ago, my father tried to sell me like a corporate asset. You can't seriously be considering this, I remember saying, standing in his mahogany-lined office. The same office where I'd spent countless hours as a child, watching him build his empire. An arranged marriage? In 2018? It's a merger of families, Athena. The Claytons have influence we need. My father, Raphael, didn't even look up from his computer. Xander is a fine young man. Harvard MBA, good family. I don't care if he's God's gift to business. I'm not a bargaining chip. That finally made him look up. You've always understood what this family requires. What did you think all those years of grooming you as my successor were for? I slammed my hands on his desk. To run the company, not to be sold off like medieval property. Don't be dramatic. He sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. The marriage secures both families' interests. You'll learn to appreciate Xander. I already have someone in my life, I said quietly. That startup boy? Please. He waved his hand dismissively. This isn't a discussion, Athena. The contracts are being drawn up. My phone buzzed. A text from Reagan. You okay? Standing by if you need backup. I straightened my spine. If you do this, you'll lose me. Don't threaten me. His voice turned to ice. You have everything because of this family. Without us, you're nothing. The words hit like physical blows, but I refused to flinch. Watch me. I walked out of that office, leaving behind my trust fund, my inheritance, and the only family I'd known since Mom died. Within hours, my accounts were frozen. By morning, I was locked out of the building where I'd worked since graduating college. You can't just crash on my couch forever, Reagan said a week later, watching me apply for jobs on my laptop. Watch me, I said again, the phrase becoming my mantra. I'm serious. She sat beside me. You need a plan. I have one. I turned the screen to show her my business proposal. Remember that app idea I told you about? The one Dad said was worthless? She scanned the document, eyebrows rising. You're really doing this? With or without help? I managed to smile. But with would be nice. That night, Reese joined us. He'd quit his job at Rogers International the day after I left, showing up at Reagan's with takeout and his savings account information. You're insane, he said, but he was grinning. Let's do it. We worked around the clock, living on coffee and determination. My father's name opened doors, but it was my ideas that kept them open. Within 2 years, our startup was valued at 8 figures. I never looked back. Until today. The email still glowed on my screen. Below the headline was a detailed report of Rogers International's vulnerabilities. Bad investments, lost contracts, whispers of ethical breaches. My father's empire was crumbling. My phone rang. Reagan's name flashed on the screen. Tell me you've seen it, she said without preamble. I'm looking at it now. What are you thinking? I leaned back in my chair, staring at the Seattle skyline through my office window. I'm thinking it's time to go shopping for some shares. Athena? Her voice held a warning. Revenge isn't your style. This isn't revenge. I touched the screen where my father's company name glowed. This is justice. He wanted to sell me to save his company. Now I'm going to buy his company to save its people. You're going to need help. I know. I smiled. Good thing I have the best team in tech. And the best friend. That too. I pulled up another email, this one from our investment team. Want to help me take down a giant? Always. She paused. What about Xander? What about him? He's on the board now. His family's shares could be crucial. I remembered the awkward dinner where my father had introduced us. Xander's rehearsed compliments and calculated smile. He's exactly where we need him to be. Thinking he's untouchable. You've changed. Reagan said softly. No. I closed my laptop. Decision made. I just finally became who I was always meant to be, without my father's shadow over me. And now, I stood up, gathering my things for the board meeting where we'd discuss our next acquisition. Now I'm going to show him exactly what nothing looks like. The Seattle rain started falling, washing the city clean. Soon it would wash away the last traces of my father's legacy, leaving something stronger in its place. Something built on merit, not manipulation. I was no longer the daughter who walked away. I was the woman who would make him wish he'd never let me go. 30 million? Reese nearly choked on his espresso. That's what they're valuing the shares at? We were in my office, overlooking the bustling tech district where our company had grown from a dream into a powerhouse. 5 years of relentless work had transformed us from 3 people on a couch to a team of hundreds. They're desperate, I said, sliding the financial report across my desk. The board is splitting into factions. Half want to oust my father, the other half are too scared to move against him. And we're about to make their decision easier. Reese's fingers drummed against his coffee cup. You know this is insane, right? Using our success to buy into your father's failure? Poetic, isn't it? The door opened and Reagan burst in, her heels clicking against the hardwood floor. You need to hear this. She didn't bother with greetings, just placed her phone on speaker and set it on my desk. The rumors are true. A voice crackled through. Raphael's losing control. 3 board members are already looking to sell their shares, but they're doing it quietly. They don't want to cause a panic. Who's your source? I asked. Remember Maria from accounting? She moved to Rogers International last year. Says the place is a powder keg waiting to blow. I pulled up our company's financial projections. How much can we move without raising red flags? 10 million without anyone blinking, Reese said. Maybe 15 if we structure it right. Do it. I met his eyes. Through the shell company we set up, no one can know it's us. Athena. Reagan's voice held that careful tone she used when she thought I was making a mistake. Are you sure this isn't too personal? Everything's personal in business. I stood up, walking to the window. That's what he taught me, remember? Yeah, but a knock interrupted us. My assistant poked her head in. Sorry to interrupt, but you have the investor call in 5 minutes. Thanks, Sarah. I turned back to my friends. Reese, start the process. Reagan, keep your source talking. I want to know everything happening in that building. They stood to leave, but Reagan lingered. There's something else. Xander's been asking about you. My stomach tightened. What about me? He's heard about our success. Wants to know if you'd be interested in a friendly merger now. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. 5 years too late. That's what I thought. She hesitated. But he's having dinner with your father tonight. Apparently they still meet regularly. Of course they do. I felt the old anger stirring. 2 men who think they can buy and sell people's lives. Just be careful. If anyone's going to recognize your moves, it's them. After she left, I joined the investor call, discussing expansion plans and profit margins with people who'd never know they were funding my redemption. By evening, Reese had texted confirmation. Our first block of shares was secured. I was reviewing the purchase documents when my office phone rang. The number was blocked. Hello? Is this Ms. Athena? A woman's voice, nervous but determined. I'm sorry to call so late, but I work for your father. I sat up straighter. How did you get this number? That's not important. What's important is that I have information you need to hear. She took a shaky breath. About what really happened with the Malaysian contract. I'm listening. For the next 20 minutes, she detailed a scheme of bribes and falsified documents that made my blood run cold. When she finished, I had pages of notes and a new understanding of just how far my father had fallen. Why are you telling me this? Because some of us remember how different things were when you were there. She paused. And because we've seen the share purchases, we know something's coming. After hanging up, I called Reese. How fast can we move on the next block of shares? Why? What's changed? Everything. I looked at my notes. Dad's not just losing control. He's breaking laws. If this gets out, the company crashes, Reese finished, and everyone loses their jobs. Exactly. We need to move faster. I pulled up my calendar. There's a charity gala next week. Every major player in Seattle Tech will be there, including your father. And Xander. I smiled grimly. Time to see what they're really afraid of. What are you planning? Something crazy. I started typing an email to our legal team. But first, I need you to set up a meeting with our friend in the SEC. Off the books. Athena. Now Reese's voice held the warning tone. Once you start this, I know. I thought of the whistleblower's voice, of all the people depending on their jobs. But someone has to stop him before he takes everyone down with him. And that someone has to be you? I looked at the photo on my desk, taken the day we launched our company. 3 friends with nothing but dreams and determination. He taught me everything I know about business, I said quietly, including how to destroy one. The city lights flickered outside my window like stars waiting to fall. By this time next month, my father's empire would be mine. The only question was, how many people would get hurt in the process? Aurora Holdings. I tested the name on my tongue, watching the lawyers file the final paperwork. Simple, elegant, and completely untraceable. And now the proud owner of 23% of Rogers International, Reese added, sliding the confirmation across my desk. Another 10% and we'll have controlling interest. My phone buzzed. A message from our SEC contact. Documents received. Meeting tomorrow at 9. The pieces are falling into place, I said, forwarding the message to Reese. How's the gala preparation going? You're officially on the guest list under Aurora's CEO credentials. They're expecting Jessica Palmer. He grinned. Nice touch using your mother's maiden name, by the way. A knock interrupted us. Reagan entered, looking worried. We have a situation. Xander's been asking questions about Aurora Holdings. My stomach tightened. What kind of questions? The dangerous kind. He's hired private investigators to look into our shell company. Let them look. I pulled up Aurora's documentation on my screen. Everything's legal and layered through 3 different countries. Even if they trace it, they'll hit walls. That's not all. Reagan sat down, her expression grave. Your father's called an emergency board meeting for Friday. Maria says he's planning something big. He's trying to consolidate power before he loses it completely. I checked the calendar. The gala's Thursday night. Perfect timing. For what? Reese asked. For Jessica Palmer to introduce herself to Seattle's tech elite. I smiled. And maybe have a chat with my father's closest allies. The next few days passed in a blur of preparations. The SEC meeting confirmed what we suspected. My father's dealings weren't just unethical, they were illegal. But we needed proof. Documentation that only someone inside could access. Thursday evening found me standing before my mirror, hardly recognizing myself. A blonde wig, colored contacts, and subtle makeup changes transformed me into Jessica Palmer, the mysterious CEO of Aurora Holdings. You look nothing like you, Reagan said, adjusting my wig. But please be careful. If they recognize you, they won't. I checked my clutch. Invitation, phone, recorder. Men like my father and Xander see what they expect to see. And they're expecting a stranger. The gala was held at the Museum of Modern Art, the same venue where I'd attended countless events as Raphael's daughter. Now I walked in as someone else entirely, watching familiar faces fail to recognize me. Ms. Palmer? A young assistant approached. Mr. Xander would like to speak with you. Perfect. I found him by the bar, looking exactly as I remembered. Expensive suit, practiced smile, eyes that calculated everything they saw. Jessica Palmer. He extended his hand. I've been very interested in meeting you. Have you? I kept my voice soft, slightly accented. I suppose that's why you've been investigating my company? He had the grace to look embarrassed. Business requires due diligence, especially with such aggressive market moves. Like buying shares in Rogers International? I sipped my champagne. Perhaps I simply recognize a good investment opportunity. Or perhaps you're working with someone else? His eyes narrowed. Someone with a personal interest in the company? Before I could respond, a familiar voice cut through the crowd. Xander, there you are. My father approached, looking older than I remembered. Gray touched his temples now, and lines creased his face that hadn't been there 5 years ago. Raphael, Xander greeted. Meet Jessica Palmer, CEO of Aurora Holdings. My father's handshake was firm. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Fascinating company you've built, Ms. Palmer. Rather quickly, too. Some of us don't need decades to build something worthwhile, I replied, watching his smile falter. Indeed. He studied me closer. You remind me of someone. My heart pounded, but I held his gaze. I doubt that. I would remember meeting someone like you. Nevertheless, he pulled out his phone, checking a message. His face darkened. If you'll excuse me, I have some business to attend to. As he walked away, Xander leaned closer. He's right, you know. There's something familiar about you. Maybe you're both seeing ghosts. I set down my empty glass. Or maybe you're just afraid of what you can't control. I left him at the bar, moving through the crowd. Throughout the evening, I spoke with board members, dropping hints about upcoming changes, watching alliances shift in real time. By midnight, I had 3 more shareholders willing to sell. Back in my car, I removed the wig with shaking hands. My phone lit up with a message from Maria. Emergency board meeting canceled. Raphael looking desperate. What did you do? Exactly what I needed to. I texted back. Be ready for Monday. Reese called as I was driving home. Stock's already moving in after hours trading. Word's getting out about Aurora Holdings. Good. I watched the city lights blur past. Have our lawyers ready. Monday morning, we go public with our ownership stake. And then? I smiled, thinking of my father's face when he'd studied mine, looking right through me. Then we show them exactly who they're dealing with. The city stretched before me, a maze of lights and shadows. Somewhere in those streets, my father was probably plotting his next move, never suspecting that his own daughter was about to become his boss. Monday couldn't come soon enough. The weekend crawled by like molasses, but Monday morning exploded into chaos. I watched from my office as financial news networks lit up with the announcement, Aurora Holdings reveals 31% stake in Rogers International. My phone hadn't stopped ringing since dawn. I ignored them all except one. They're panicking, Maria reported, her voice hushed. Your father's locked himself in his office with the legal team. Xander's been running between floors like his suit's on fire. Any other reactions? Thomas from the board is practically dancing. Says he's been waiting years for someone to challenge Raphael. A text from Reese flashed on my screen. Turn on Channel 8 now. I grabbed the remote, and there was my father, surrounded by reporters outside his building. He looked composed, but I could see the tension in his jaw. The same tension he'd shown the night I left. Aurora Holdings' investment shows confidence in our company's future, he was saying. We welcome their partnership and look forward to discussing their vision for... Mr. Rogers, a reporter interrupted. Sources say Aurora has been meeting with other shareholders. Are you concerned about a potential takeover? The muscle in his jaw twitched. Rogers International has been family-run for 30 years. That won't change. I muted the TV as Reagan walked in. Ready for phase 2? Already in motion. I pulled up an email on my screen. The SEC received our whistleblower package this morning, complete with documentation of the Malaysian deal. How long until they act? Hours, maybe days. I stood up, straightening my blazer. But that's not what I'm waiting for. What then? That. I pointed to my phone as it lit up with a number I recognized. My father's private line. I put it on speaker. Jessica Palmer speaking. Ms. Palmer. His voice was controlled, professional. I believe we need to talk. In person. I agree. Shall we say noon? Your office? A pause. I'd prefer neutral ground. The Metropolitan Club? Perfect. I smiled at Reagan. I look forward to it. After hanging up, Reagan shook her head. You're really going to meet him as Jessica? One last time. I opened my desk drawer, pulling out the blonde wig. I want to see his face when he realizes how badly he underestimated me. The Metropolitan Club was nearly empty when I arrived. Just a few business lunches scattered through the dimly lit space. My father sat at his usual table by the windows, Xander at his side. Gentlemen? I slid into the seat across from them, noting how they both studied my disguise. Shall we discuss the future of Rogers International? Let's discuss Aurora Holdings first. My father leaned forward. Who are you really working for? I work for my shareholders, Mr. Rogers, just like you should have been doing. Xander's eyes narrowed. What's that supposed to mean? The Malaysian contract, the offshore accounts, the buried environmental reports. I watched their faces pale. Should I continue? You're bluffing, my father said, but his hand shook slightly as he reached for his water. Am I? I pulled out my phone, showing them the SEC confirmation email. Your shareholders deserve to know how their company's being run. Don't you agree? What do you want? Xander demanded. Simple. Mr. Rogers steps down as CEO. The board appoints new leadership. Leadership that won't trade ethics for profits. You can't. I can. I cut my father off. I have the shares, the evidence, and the support of key board members. The only question is whether you'll exit gracefully or in handcuffs. My father's face turned red. Do you know who I am? What I've built? I know exactly who you are. I stood up, removing my wig in one smooth motion. You taught me everything I know about business, Dad, including how to take what I want. The shock on their faces was everything I'd imagined. Xander actually knocked over his water glass. My father just stared, his complexion going from red to white. Athena? He whispered. Surprise. I smoothed my real hair back. Still think I'm nothing without you? This is impossible, Xander sputtered. You disappeared. You were running some tiny startup. That tiny startup just bought controlling interest in your company. I gathered my things. The board meets tomorrow at 9. I expect your resignation on my desk by then. I turned to leave, but my father's voice stopped me. Why? Looking back, I saw not the powerful man who'd tried to sell my future, but someone small. Someone who'd lost everything that mattered chasing things that didn't. Because you taught me that business is personal, I said softly. Consider this a daughter's gratitude for all those lessons. I walked out of the club into the bright Seattle afternoon, leaving them with the ruins of their empire. My phone buzzed, Reese sending confirmation that our legal team was ready for tomorrow. The game was nearly over. Tomorrow I'd take my father's seat at the head of his table. But first I had a company to save, not for revenge, but for all the people who deserved better than what he'd given them. Sometimes karma needs a little help, and I was happy to provide it. The boardroom fell silent as I walked in, all eyes fixed on me. My father's chair sat empty at the head of the table, a throne waiting for its new queen. Instead, I took a seat in the middle, between Reese and Reagan. Let's begin, Thomas, the senior board member, announced. As you're all aware, we're here to address the leadership transition and... The door burst open. My father stormed in, Xander trailing behind him like a shadow. This meeting is a farce, he declared, slapping a folder onto the table. I filed an injunction against Aurora Holdings. My lawyers will prove this hostile takeover is illegal. I kept my voice calm. On what grounds? Fraud, deception, using insider knowledge I gained 5 years after leaving the company? I raised an eyebrow. That'll be interesting to prove in court, especially given what the SEC is about to reveal about your own practices. Murmurs rippled through the room. Thomas cleared his throat. Perhaps we should address the elephant in the room. Athena, would you care to explain your position? I stood up, feeling every eye on me. Aurora Holdings now controls 42% of Rogers International shares. Combined with supporting shareholders, I nodded to several board members. We have a clear majority. Bought through lies, my father spat. No, through careful investment and strategy. Everything I learned from you, actually. I opened my laptop, connecting it to the room's display. Now, shall we discuss the real issues? Like the Malaysian contract? The color drained from his face as documents filled the screen. Emails, contracts, bank transfers. The board members leaned forward, their expressions shifting from confusion to shock to anger. These transactions. Thomas adjusted his glasses. Are these authentic? Completely, Reese confirmed, along with evidence of environmental violations in 3 countries and systematic accounting fraud. Xander jumped up. You can't just sit down. I cut him off. Your family's involvement is documented too. Would you like me to show those files next? He sank back into his chair, suddenly looking very young and very scared. The SEC has all of this, I continued. They're announcing their investigation this afternoon, but we have a chance to get ahead of it. I clicked to the next slide, a comprehensive restructuring plan. We can save this company, but only with complete transparency and new leadership. You planned this all along, my father said quietly. Every move, every share purchase. I learned from the best. I met his eyes. You always said business was chess, not checkers. The next 2 hours were intense negotiations, punctuated by heated arguments and desperate attempts at compromise. But in the end, the numbers didn't lie, and neither did the evidence. The vote is final, Thomas announced. Raphael will step down as CEO, effective immediately. Athena will assume the role of executive chair, with the board's full support. My father stood up slowly, his shoulders bent as if under an invisible weight. You think you've won? This isn't about winning. I walked over to him, keeping my voice low. It's about fixing what you broke. The company, its people, their trust. Their trust? He laughed bitterly. What about my trust in you? My own daughter plotting behind my back. Like you plotted to sell me to the highest bidder? I stepped closer. The difference is, I'm here to build something better, not tear it down for profit. He stared at me for a long moment, something flickering in his eyes. Pride? Regret? Before I could decide, he turned and walked out, leaving his company badge on the table. Xander lingered, looking lost. What happens to me? That depends. I gathered my papers. Are you willing to work for a woman you once thought you could buy? He flinched but held my gaze. I was wrong, about a lot of things. Prove it. Help me clean up this mess and maybe you'll keep your job. After the room cleared, Reagan squeezed my shoulder. You okay? Ask me tomorrow. I looked around the boardroom, remembering all the times I'd sat here as a child, dreaming of the day I'd run the company. This isn't how I imagined it would happen. No, Reese said, gathering his things. It's better. You earned this, Athena. The hard way. My phone buzzed. A news alert. The SEC announcement had dropped. Within minutes, our PR team would release our statement about the leadership change and our commitment to transparency. What now? Reagan asked. I walked to the window, looking out at the city where I'd lost everything and built myself back up. Now we do what I came here to do. We save the company, protect the employees, and make things right. And your father? I thought of his face as he left, of all the years I'd spent trying to make him proud. He made his choices. Now he has to live with them. I turned back to my friends, my partners in this crazy venture. Just like I have to live with mine. The setting sun painted the boardroom in shades of gold, a new dawn for an old empire. Tomorrow would bring challenges, investigations, and endless work. But for now, I allowed myself a moment to savor the victory that tasted less like revenge and more like justice. Your father's here. Sarah's voice crackled through the intercom. He's demanding to see you. I checked my watch. 9:15 a.m. 2 weeks since the takeover, and he'd finally shown up, right on schedule. Send him in. The door opened, and my father entered, looking both smaller and fiercer than I remembered. His suit was still impeccable, but his eyes held a wild energy I'd never seen before. Come to clean out your office? I asked, not looking up from my computer. Come to warn you. He dropped a stack of papers on my desk. The SEC investigation? It goes both ways. You used insider knowledge from 5 years ago. I finally met his gaze. Ancient history, legally speaking. Try again. Damn it, Athena. He slammed his hands on the desk. Do you have any idea what you've done? The contracts we're losing, the partnership's falling apart. Because of my leadership? I stood up. Or because your illegal dealings are finally coming to light? I built this company through bribes and buried bodies. I pulled up the Malaysian contract on my screen. Want to explain why we were paying triple the market rate for labor? Or where those consulting fees really went? He fell silent, his face ashen. That's what I thought. I pressed the intercom. Sarah, please send in Mr. Thomas and the legal team. My father's eyes narrowed. What's this? Your chance at redemption. The door opened as Thomas entered with 2 lawyers. We're offering you a deal. I don't make deals with traitors. Then make one with your daughter. I softened my voice. The one who learned everything from you, including how to fix broken things. Thomas laid out the paperwork. We're prepared to offer you a consulting position. Limited scope, no executive power, but you'll help us transition key relationships and untangle the legitimate deals from the problematic ones. You want me to help dismantle my own legacy? I want you to help save it. I walked around the desk. The company's bleeding, Dad. Not because of me, but because of years of shortcuts and compromises. Help me fix it. He stared at the contract, his hands trembling slightly. And if I refuse? Then the SEC gets everything. Every email, every transaction, every meeting you had with officials who suddenly changed their minds about regulations. The room fell silent except for the hum of computers and the distant sound of traffic below. I watched my father's face as he processed his options, seeing the exact moment he realized he was trapped. You really are my daughter, he said finally, a mix of pride and bitterness in his voice. I am. That's why I'm offering you this chance instead of burning everything down. He picked up the contract, scanning the terms. Limited consulting role, no board position, required cooperation with federal investigators. Take it, Thomas urged. It's more than fair given the circumstances. My father looked at me, really looked at me, perhaps for the first time in years. You planned this from the beginning, didn't you? Not just the takeover, but this moment right here. I learned from the best. I handed him a pen. Always be 3 moves ahead, remember? A ghost of a smile touched his lips. And always have an exit strategy. He took the pen, his hand steady now. Even for your enemies. You're not my enemy, Dad. I watched him sign. You're my cautionary tale. After the lawyers left with the signed documents, my father lingered. What happens now? Now you go home, rest, and come back Monday ready to work. Under my leadership. Under my daughter's leadership. He straightened his tie. Never thought I'd say those words. Never thought you'd have to. I opened the door. See you Monday. After he left, Reagan and Reese came in, having watched everything from the adjacent office. Well, Reagan said, that was intense, but necessary. Reese examined the signed contract. You really think he'll play ball? He doesn't have a choice. I sat back down, suddenly exhausted. And somewhere under all that pride, he knows this is his best option. Speaking of options, Reagan pulled up a chair. The board wants to know about the restructuring plan. How deep are we cutting? I pulled up the organizational chart we'd been working on. Not as deep as they think. We're not here to destroy, remember? We're here to rebuild. With your father as a consultant. Reese shook his head. That's either brilliant or insane. Maybe both. I looked out at the city, at the empire I'd inherited through conquest rather than succession. But sometimes you need to keep your enemies closer than your friends. He's still your father, Reagan said softly. Yes. I touched the photo on my desk, the only personal item I'd brought to this office. Me at graduation, my father's arm around my shoulders, both of us smiling. That's why this had to be done right. Not for revenge, but for redemption. Monday would bring new challenges, old wounds, and the complicated dance of working with the man who'd both made and broken me. But for now, I had won something more valuable than control of a company. I had won the chance to make things right. The first month working with my father was like defusing a bomb while teaching someone to dance. Every meeting was tense, every interaction loaded with unspoken history. These contracts are solid, he insisted, spreading documents across the conference room table. We've worked with these suppliers for 15 years. At inflated rates, I countered, pulling up our audit findings, and with kickbacks hidden in processing fees. That's how business is done in those regions. Was done. I highlighted the discrepancies. We're doing it differently now. A knock interrupted us. Xander entered, looking uncomfortable. Sorry to interrupt, but we have a situation. The Jakarta team is threatening to walk. My father's face darkened. Because of the new compliance requirements? Because of what they're hiding, I said, standing. Conference them in. The next hour was a masterclass in negotiation, me leading, my father watching. I laid out the new terms: full transparency, fair wages, no more hidden fees. When they threatened to leak damaging information, I simply shared our own documentation first. Impressive, my father said after the call ended with a new, clean contract. You've learned to use truth as a weapon. I learned to use it as a shield. I gathered my papers. Something you never understood. He caught my arm as I turned to leave. I understood more than you think. I just chose differently. And how's that working out for you? His grip loosened. I deserve that. You deserve worse. I pulled away. But I'm not here for revenge anymore. Then why keep me around? Why not just bury me with the evidence? Before I could answer, Reagan burst in. Turn on the news, now. The financial networks were exploding with breaking news. Our biggest competitor had just been raided by federal agents. The same competitor that had been trying to buy us out for years. They're going down for the same things we almost did, my father said quietly. If I hadn't stopped you, that would be us. I turned to face him. That's why you're here. Because you know where all the bodies are buried and we need to dig them up before they poison everything. His phone buzzed. Probably other industry players panicking, looking for advice. Mine lit up too, but with a different message. From Thomas. Board emergency meeting in 10 minutes. The boardroom was chaos when we arrived. Directors arguing, phones ringing, fear thick in the air. Our stock is falling, someone shouted. The whole sector is tanking. Good thing we're not in that sector anymore, I said loudly, taking my place at the head of the table. As of this morning, we're officially a tech company with legacy holdings. Silence fell. My father, standing in the corner, straightened up. The restructuring? He said. You've already done it. I nodded to Reese, who distributed tablets showing our new corporate structure. While everyone was watching the compliance drama, we were rebuilding. Clean contracts, ethical partnerships, and a focus on actual innovation instead of financial engineering. The Jakarta team? Xander asked. Will be our new tech hub. Legitimate work. Fair pay. No kickbacks needed. You planned this, my father said, something like admiration in his voice. Use the industry crisis as cover for our transformation. Like you taught me. Never waste a good crisis. I met his eyes. Though I prefer creating opportunities instead of disasters. The board meeting lasted hours, but by the end, our new direction was clear. While our competitors scrambled to hide their sins, we were emerging clean, transformed, ready for the future. Later, in my office, my father lingered after the others left. I've been thinking about my role here, he said. Having second thoughts? No. He sat down heavily. Having revelations. Watching you today. You're better at this than I ever was. Because I'm not afraid of the truth. Because you understand something I forgot. He pulled out an old photo from his wallet. Me at my first business presentation, age 12, beaming with pride. Business isn't just about winning. It's about building something that lasts. Is this where you apologize for trying to sell me to the highest bidder? This is where I thank you for saving me from myself. He placed the photo on my desk. And where I ask if you're ready for what comes next. The federal investigation? The future. He stood up. Because after today, everyone knows there's a new player in town, and not everyone will be happy about it. I thought of the competitor being raided, of all the other companies like my father's old version of Rogers International, built on shadows and handshakes. Let them come, I said. We've got nothing to hide anymore. He nodded, a mix of pride and regret on his face. No, we don't. Thanks to you. As he left, I picked up the old photo, remembering that eager 12-year-old who wanted nothing more than to make her father proud. In the end, I'd done something better. I'd made myself proud. Ready for this? Reagan asked, adjusting my jacket as we stood backstage at the tech conference. The audience murmur filtered through the curtains. Investors, journalists, and industry leaders all waiting to hear from the woman who'd transformed Rogers International from a scandal-plagued dinosaur into a tech powerhouse. Born ready. I checked my notes one last time. Where's Dad? Front row, looking nervous. She peeked through the curtain. Xander's with him. They're both actually behaving. Miracles never cease. The stage manager signaled. 2 minutes until my keynote. My phone buzzed with a message from Reese. Stock just hit an all-time high. You're trending on Twitter. Ladies and gentlemen, the announcer's voice boomed. Please welcome Athena, CEO of Rogers Tech. I walked onto the stage to applause, spotting my father immediately. He'd lost weight, looked healthier since stepping back from power. Therapy and honest work had done wonders for both of us. Everyone expects me to talk about our technological innovations, I began. About our breakthrough in sustainable energy storage or our new quantum computing division. But today, I want to talk about something more fundamental. Truth. The audience quieted. 6 months ago, this company was built on lies. Today, we're built on transparency. The journey between those 2 points? That's the real innovation. I clicked through slides showing our transformation. Clean energy projects replacing corrupt contracts, ethical AI initiatives growing where bribery once flourished. My father taught me that business was war. I continued, meeting his eyes. He wasn't entirely wrong. But the real battle isn't against competitors or regulations. It's against the temptation to take shortcuts, to value profit over principle. Movement caught my eye. Federal agents entering the auditorium. Right on schedule. Speaking of principles, I said, I have an announcement. This morning, Rogers Tech provided evidence to the Justice Department that will help prosecute corruption across our entire industry. Not because we had to, but because it's right. Gasps rippled through the crowd. My father sat straighter, chin high. He'd known this was coming, had helped compile the evidence himself. We're not just changing our company, I declared. We're changing the game. No more backdoor deals, no more buried bodies. From now on, success comes from innovation, not manipulation. The standing ovation lasted 5 minutes. Afterward, in the green room, my father found me. That was quite a show, he said, hands in his pockets. You just painted a target on our backs. No, I just showed everyone we're bulletproof. I poured 2 coffees, handed him one. Transparency is better armor than secrecy ever was. When did you get so wise? When I stopped trying to be you and started being myself. He smiled, a real smile, not the corporate mask I'd grown up watching. I've been thinking about stepping back completely. Maybe do some teaching, share lessons learned the hard way. Planning your redemption arc? Learning from yours. He set down his coffee. I never apologized, did I? For trying to force you into that marriage, for choosing power over my own daughter. No, you didn't. I'm sorry, Athena. You deserved better. I got better. I gestured around us. I built better. The door opened as Reese and Reagan entered, followed by Xander. The feds want to talk timeline for the evidence handover, Reese reported. And 3 major tech blogs want exclusive interviews, Reagan added. And I, Xander said, want to apologize too. I was part of the old way of doing things. I'd like to be part of the new way. I studied him. The entitled boy who'd once thought he could buy me had become a man willing to learn. Prove it, I said. Help us build something that matters. My father touched my shoulder. You already have. Looking around at these people, my former enemies turned allies, my friends who'd become family, my father who'd learned to follow instead of force, I felt something settle into place. We all have, I said, and we're just getting started. Later that night, I stood in my office watching the city lights flicker like stars. My phone was full of messages, congratulations, interview requests, even a few threats from those who feared what our evidence would reveal. A knock at the door revealed Reagan with champagne and Reese with takeout. Just like old times, Reagan said, pouring glasses. Except now we're plotting world domination instead of startup survival. Not domination, I corrected. Revolution. To revolution, then. Reese raised his glass. And to the woman who turned revenge into redemption. To family, I added, thinking of my father's apology, of bridges burned and rebuilt stronger. The one we're born with and the one we choose. The city sparkled below, full of possibilities. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new battles, new opportunities to prove that doing good was good business. But tonight, surrounded by my chosen family, I was exactly where I needed to be. Not in anyone's shadow, but in my own light. To the future, we said together, and drank to the world we were building, one truth at a time.